Okay, Hare Krishna, everybody. Thank you for showing up today. This is the fourth and final installment of the Souls Are Made for Love series, and we're going to talk about something that I don't think is talked about nearly enough, and that is really important if we're going to travel this particular path of bhakti that leads to love. Right? Because we talked about there's different other kinds of bhaktis that can lead you to liberation and to good things. It's not a problem, but this particular thing that's being offered now, where we have this divine love prema with Krishna, is different, and it takes it takes more than some others will do. Other paths will take, and so there's an image that's given. It's given in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, where there's a little, kind of metaphor here that bhakti is like a creeper or a vine, is really what it is, and that it's planted. When we talked last time about the unconditional mercy that Krishna can give us, and so it says that when somebody comes to know of this type of bhakti and is interested, since it's a seed has been planted in the heart, this bhakti lata bij, the seed of the creeper or the vine of bhakti, and it sprouts there, and it grows into a, and we'll hear a little bit. I'll hear Srila Prabhupada describe it, and it grows and grows in the heart. And but then there's some other things that have to happen if you're a proper gardener of this vine, and that means looking out for and pulling the weeds. And so we'll take a little look here. This is from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 2, Text 30, Srila Prabhupada's commentary. He goes through it somewhat elaborately here. So he says, by systematic nurturing, the creeper will grow to such an extent that it will penetrate the coverings of the universe. As we have heard in the previous verses, reach the effulgent sky, the Brahmajyoti, and go farther and farther and reach the spiritual sky, where there are innumerable spiritual planets called Vaikuntha Lokas. Above all of them is Krishna Loka, or Goloka Vrindavan, wherein the growing creeper enters and takes repose at the lotus feet of Lord Sri Krishna, the original personality of Godhead. So that's what's supposed to happen. But then he says, it so happens that by the watering process, and this is hearing and chanting, the different angas of bhakti, especially hearing and chanting are mentioned, but all the other things that you do as a spiritual practice. So it so happens that by the watering process, some weeds are also grown. So it says the seed is planted and you water it by the hearing and chanting and other practices of bhakti. It says that some weeds are also grown. And unless such weeds are uprooted, the nurturing of the main creeper or the creeper of bhakti yoga may be hampered. And he says, actually, these weeds are material enjoyment, merging of the self and the absolute without separate individuality, and many other desires in the field of religion, economic development, sense enjoyment, and emancipation. So there's a whole lot of different ones of those things. And it says, so they're sprouting up around the plant and may kind of slow its growth or even choke it out. And then he goes on further in the purport. He says, there are many other weeds like disobedience to the tenets of the revered scriptures, unnecessary engagements, killing animals, hankering after, and then these three, I've highlighted these three: material gain, prestige, and adoration. Prabhupada sometimes talks about these three things. He usually says profit, adoration, and distinction as enemies. So if we're practicing bhakti with these other desires, and we want he says prestige or distinction and adoration or respect and such things, and or some other kind of material gain, says these things are detrimental. And so again, since we're talking about the sort of bhakti that takes you to this divine love, then this weed removal is essential to it. You can't avoid it if you want to have success. And so he says, if sufficient care is not taken, then the watering process may only help to breed the weeds, stunting the healthy growth of the main creeper and resulting in no fructification of the ultimate requirement, love of God. And I wonder, how surprised you. I mean, this is kind of a famous thing, but I wonder how often you hear this sort of thing. I don't think it's talked about so much. You can just chant and go back to Godhead, right? Water the creep, water the seed, and it all works out. Um, and so what's actually given here is a couple of things that may surprise you also, because we talked about it last week, that the mercy, the seed of bhakti can be planted in anyone. It's simply, the devotees can give it to anybody. There's nothing you can do to deserve it, and there's no disqualifications that could prevent you from receiving it. All right? And so therefore, and especially in this day and age, people aren't generally born so holy. And so it's expected that the seed is planted in an unclean heart. That was, of course, Srila Prabhupada's great faith that he could take it any place around the world and give it to anybody. And then that it could work in that way. There's no prerequisites. You can receive that seed. And so it's presumed, right, that even if you take up this path, this path of this very special type of bhakti, that you're starting out with lots of undesirable things in you. The heart is unclean, or it has different contaminations. It's dirty. That's expected. And then even surprisingly here, it says that by performing bhakti, chanting Hare Krishna, hearing about it, doing the other types of service, says that new challenges can arise. Right? There's other places that says these weeds may look almost just like the bhakti creeper. It's hard to distinguish the two. So even by bhakti, other challenges start to pop up. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he describes this in the Madhurya Kadambini, where he looks at the path of bhakti in some detail. And he mentions that there's a stage that's called that's part of unsteady devotional service that he calls Taranga Rangini, which is riding the waves of bhakti. And he says, because bhakti is all attractive, someone who has bhakti becomes attractive and oftentimes gains some capabilities and some charisma and charm and such things. And he says, and that because of that, they may receive some especially adoration and distinction, as Prabhupada says, profit, adoration, and distinction. People may praise them. They may get some position for it. They may move up in the society. So there become available new options for things outside of the core purpose of bhakti. New weeds can sprout up from bhakti itself. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he gives a list of different causes of unwanted things of the weeds, and one of them is bhakti, for this particular reason. So he says, as Prabhupada says, by watering the creeper, the water that we use, the chanting of the holy name and the practice of our bhakti, actually may cause these other weeds to increase. So that's probably not something that you hear a lot of the times. You may have heard it before. And so here this is it's not a very good reproduction here, but this comes from this is a chart made up from what's in the Madhurya Kadambini about these different types of anarthas or weeds. And he says they can come from our past sins, duskritota. And so these are like the ones that are already there, particularly when the seed is planted generally. Strangely enough, sukritota, arising from previous pious works, Because it says that when we have sukriti, good karma, it attaches us to this world. We perform good karma in order to get something material, and so that also is a weed because it makes us more attached to this world. Aparadota, arising from offenses, and bhaktyuta, arising from bhakti. And he shows there's 5 different stages of removal of them: partial, pervasive, almost complete, complete, and absolute. And he shows at which stage of the advancement of bhakti um, these things are removed, and the level to which they're removed. And so you see that there are some anarthas, weeds that are not completely removed until you actually have the Lord's association. It goes all the way up to prema. All right, so when you have steadiness, there's complete for the bhakti and the duskrita and the sukrita, and then stage 2 pervasive for aparad, and that ruchi, which is a really powerful stage, and a sakti, you remove those for other first 2, bhakti and duskrita. Then bhava, which is a type of perfection, even prema, there's something left over until you actually meet the Lord face to face. So it's not something that's unexpected or surprising that there are weeds, and that, I think there's a reason why you don't hear about that much, and we'll talk about that reason. And I think it's really important for us as a society to try to address this a little bit in a way if we want to survive. Because what I've seen, and what people experience, is we tend to get kind of to this spot here where we're trying to work through the major parts of the weeds, but we kind of get stuck there. It's hard to get to this nishta stage. And I think part of it is because we're not talking about and dealing with this notion of the weeds as much as we need to. We don't think that that we think that it's, they're not normal and usual, but it's something unusual. So yeah, so the other thing that also may be surprising, first of all, that we have this practice of uttama bhakti, which can happen in an unclean heart. You don't have you can start off very dirty, and it sprouts. It says the first 2 leaves are kleshagni, the removal of all negativities, right? And what is it? Kleshagni and Sukhata, which gives you all positive things. So it says it starts to transforms you. It transforms our initial, mixed bag of characteristics. So it really starts to do it. And so therefore it's maybe a little surprising, but that something pure can grow in an impure place and actually undertake the purification. But then it's surprising that even the nourishment of that process can create other problems, in addition to the ones that were already there. And then we really have to deal with them, right? Prabhupada says we have to pull the weeds, because the watering process, our sadhana, actually makes them grow if they're not addressed. So we can't just chant Hare Krishna really hard and hope they're going to go away. It may help the creeper grow also, which is nice, but it's also going to water these weeds if we don't deal with them. So we really actually have to take action, a separate action, just from our sadhana. It's part of our sadhana, but in addition to the other parts of our practice, we have to actually deal with the weeds. Mm-hmm. And if we want to do that, we have to be on the lookout for them. Right? There has to be a certain level of introspection, and we need to notice them and recognize them. You can't pull them if you have your eyes closed. And so oftentimes we think, right, you chant and be happy. Well, that's true from a broader perspective, but there's something else that goes into it. And so we have to become more self-aware to be able to see what is there, what has to be dealt with. Otherwise, we're in trouble. We can keep chanting and keep reading and keep serving, and we find that somehow these things just don't go away. because there's this extra process that's it's baked right into the image. Lord Chaitanya said there's that offenses against the holy name, are like a mad elephant coming in and trampling your garden, so you have to build a wall around that. But then there's the weeding of the garden, so it's integral to the process, and we don't talk about it that much. And so, what I'm going to suggest you, the reason why we don't talk about them that much is that is for this reason here. It says it becomes much more difficult to, I think, even look for or find and deal with the weeds if we think they're anomalous, like they're not supposed to be there. That it's only me maybe that has these things. Everybody else is chanting Hare Krishna. Everything is is going away, right? Or that that shouldn't be happening, and therefore shameful. You know. My spiritual master tells the story that when he first moved into the temple, he said he had some difficulty. This is pretty typical for everybody who moves into a temple, and he tried to I guess he was going to ask him for some advice, or, from one of the devotees there who'd been there longer. And when he said that he was having this difficulty, he said the other devotee kind of his eyes got wide, and he actually took a physical step back and said, "Oh, you must not be a devotee." Right? And so he said, well, he said at that point he learned not to talk about this, not to talk about it, right? Because we're supposed to be so pure. So if we think like that the weeds are it's not normal, but I somehow have them, then we're gonna do some different things. One of the things we might do is just kind of close our eyes and try to water more intensely. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, and hoping we open our eyes, it'll be gone. But we see that that's not going to work because there's that additional process required. Or we may do something. There's ways to in an unhealthy types of compensation for them, right? Because if you feel shame, it's painful. It's painful if you feel like, wow, I'm failing. Right? I've taken up this practice. It means so much to me, and I'm failing. Because we're not thinking that this is expected. We're not normalizing that. We're not talking a lot about that. I mean, it's interesting. Like, to me, one of the advantages of having a society or an institution is that you get an incredible amount, at least you have the potential to get a great amount of collective wisdom, right? Because all different kinds of people and all different kinds of circumstances have come in and tried to deal with bhakti. And everybody's unique. So there's I'm sure there's a lot of the same weeds that we all have, but we're coming at it from different ways. And so during the course of the existence of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, and in the course of the existence of our Krishna consciousness movement, a lot of people have pulled a lot of weeds. Right? So there's a lot of wisdom out there, but people don't talk about it very much because the underlying understanding is that I shouldn't have had that. Whew, somehow thank God now I can be a devotee again. Whereas like I don't know, one idea I've had for a long time, but it's like have a website someplace where people could anonymously share their experiences. Because there's like we should have like this huge like handbook or something. If you're here, if you run into this is how people have dealt with it. I thought this, I did this, I dealt with it in some such and such a way. But yet we don't ever hear about it because people feel ashamed that they had the problem in the first place. And so then one thing that can happen is that you can find a way to make yourself feel better about feeling like you're a failure. So one of the typical things that'll happen is you'll try to look at other people and see how they're worse than I am. Right? You can get into finding fault with others. So, well, I may have a few weeds, but look at these other people. Which is even more harmful. And again, it's perpetuating the notion that they're unexpected and shameful and shouldn't be there. But or says another way you can do is you can maybe find something you're really good at, you know, or maybe you can dress the deities beautiful, you're a good cook, or you can chant, or you can give great classes, or you can do various things that people will recognize you for. You can maybe try to move up in the organization, become a head of something. It's all okay, other people must think I'm okay, right? And so when you do things like that, when you try to compensate, you add a new problem on top of the weed. You like create a new weed by because of the other weed, right? Because you're not able to honestly to deal with it or to consider it, because it shouldn't be there. And so we've probably not, it's not purposeful, we unwittingly have created this atmosphere of shame for people and a need to be quiet, and we can't help each other. I had a devotee tell me that when he's a Srila Prabhupada disciple, a very thoughtful person, used to be here in the DC area, and he said that he remembered even from pretty much from the beginning that he came. He said when we came together in public, we kind of put on a mask of being more advanced than we really were, and then we had our own private lives where we were basically dealing with the weeds, you know. And so it's an isolating situation. You see everybody else is, they're chanting and dancing and everything looks happy, and I have these weeds in my heart. And so it makes it, much more difficult to want to even see them. You don't want to look for them. And when you find them, you want to just hope they'll go away, or just somehow take care of itself, because you feel bad. You feel bad about it. All right. So I said here, the process is ever so much more difficult when the spiritual society to which one belongs feels that the weeds are abnormal rather than normalizing them and talking about them. Creates an atmosphere of implied condemnation rather than an atmosphere of support and assistance. And I think that's what you have. We've normalized shame, and it hurts people's faith, right? If we don't think we're supposed to have these weeds, even though they're there. This is it wouldn't be mentioned in the Shastra. Prabhupada wouldn't talk about them in this purport if they were unexpected or unusual. They're there. It's part of the process, people, because we came into this process impure. It's part of the Lord's grace that He takes us as we are. It's absolutely normal. It would be would be highly unusual for it not to be weeds there. That would usually imply a lot of advancement in previous lifetimes. But most of us are coming in, not with so much of that. And so it's normal, it's expected, it's part of the process. It's not anything shameful. It's not anything unusual. But when we're all kind of, ooh, you feel it creates an atmosphere to push that underground. You try to ignore it, you know, or maybe you try to compensate in an unhealthy way, creating a brand new one. But there's not a supportive feeling where you can actually deal with it, where you can share the experiences in that way. And here it says in the nectar of instruction, right? It says there's a Prabhupada calls them the 6 symptoms of love. That's priti lakshana, or love or affection, shared by one devotee and another. And one of the ones is revealing one's mind in confidence and inquiring confidentially, right? Like you can talk to each other, and not have it go out on Facebook. Oh, such and such is, so fallen. But you can open one's heart to one another in a supportive situation, you know. And in so many ways, the way our society has gone by ignoring this sort of thing is making it harder and harder for it to do. So it's perpetuating us getting stuck with these weeds, you know. And so in lieu of that, you know, I think what we have to do is first of all realize that this is normal. It's expected. It would be abnormal not to have them. And they don't just go away on their own by chanting, but they have to be addressed. And so I think really we have to, in this point, if we don't have a supportive environment, we at least have to begin with that this understanding of Krishna's unconditional love. That he sees, he not only sees what we do, he knows what we think and feel, and he knows what we've done, thought, and felt through all of our many lifetimes. And we've probably had some ones where we're quite a bit worse than we are right now. And Krishna is never, he's never blinked. He's right there in the heart. And he continues to reach out for us. He continues to want to help us. We talked about last time how even if people fall away from the path, even quite spectacularly, Krishna doesn't, he keeps reminding them. They come back. He doesn't say, oh, you failed. There's no failure in Krishna's eyes. And so we have to develop some compassion for ourselves, because if we've been in this environment where it's it's unintentional, but it's just there's a certain lack of information there, and it kind of keeps getting passed down generation after generation. That that we feel that it's just not normal, and we're failing in some way. So we have that sort of situation. So we have to kind of remind ourselves of Krishna's way, the way that Krishna looks upon us, and begin to have some compassion. It's not that we love the weeds, we want to keep them. We don't want them, but unless we have some real compassion for ourselves and don't see ourselves as compromised and failure, but it's just that this is a natural part of the process, then we can open-heartedly look at those things, try to figure out what is it, why is it, a lot of times we have different kinds of traumas or different kind of things that cause us to have these other situations, and then if we ignore them, they cause us other difficult problems, even health problems, or they cause us to try to have to escape, want to dissociate from it, because you feel that feeling of failure is a really, really, especially if it's something that's important. If we're trying to take up this process, it's something that's very important to us. And if we think that we're failing, if we can't make any progress, there's something hopeless about us. It's completely demoralizing, and it doesn't have to be. It's normal. And so, if we can begin to have compassion, whether usually if you're judgmental to yourself and others. Sometimes you're more balanced one way or the other, so we have to have some develop compassion for ourselves and others when we see the weaknesses in others, and begin to develop some sanghas where we can create safe spaces to talk about things like this, and to feel support. I mean, there was it's really helpful when you have, it's not just Krishna who cares, but other people that are tangible to you, and also we can help each other. I know it was kind of a I've heard from there was a devotee that used to live in Detroit, and then she lived in Gitanagari, and she was a disciple of His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Swami, and he used to have them go to other devotees and ask them to critique them and write it down. Because sometimes, I mean, I'm sure I'm sure I do it. I've seen it in other people where, there's something that's just really obvious, an obvious weed, and that everybody sees, but the person doesn't see it themselves. Because I mean, either they're embarrassed about it or they just don't want to see it. And so if you have people who are your well wishers and want to help you, they can say, hey, don't say, hey, here, look at this, you have this, but look, I see this in you. Are you aware of that? You know, we can help each other in so many ways. But sometimes there'll be something that's there that we don't want to see it, but it's some kind of is very powerful, and is working on us. So you can't do anything about it until you recognize it, and then you have to consider, what is it? Is it a mistake? Is it some kind of deeper trauma? What is it? What is this issue? And just having an environment, where you have support, you feel it, can feel it from Krishna and feel it from others. It really, really, it's like grease that helps the wheels to turn. You know, and I know they said there's research done with the people that do different types of therapy, and they looked at they looked at uh, uh, they looked at the results across different types of therapeutic modalities, and the thing that correlated most strongly with a successful outcome was the quality of the relationship between the therapist and the patient. You know, so Krishna's love, but Krishna's love maybe we is a little theoretical for us perhaps. But when we can get care and concern from other tangible humans, you know, it makes everything so much easier. Simply to be able to talk about it. I've done a couple of grief support groups. Rambaru and Karuna Care has kind of started those things, and we did a couple of them. Rukmini Devi and I did a couple of them, and I mean, a lot of it was just we went over a book from somebody who has been grief counseling for a long time and studied that for a long time, and so we would spend half of the time you know talking about what they read in a chapter about that, so giving them some kind of maybe understanding of how grief works. But then the other half of it was just people could just get to talk and say what's on their minds and in their hearts, and that's the part that really did something for them. I said I couldn't talk to anybody about this. We're supposed to be transcendental, and just to be able to speak it out loud instead of holding it inside is so healing. And to have it, and especially if it's received by compassionate ears instead of condemning ones. Just the ability to be able to speak it out loud, it takes some of the power away from it. Just really simple things, can be helpful. You know, so I really think that if we really are looking to tread this path where we have this ultimate destination of Krishna prema, where there's this mind-boggling love that between us and everybody else, and Krishna and everybody else, that we have to go back and remember this part of it. So I think it's under discussed because people are ashamed. Like, this is a really painful subject. Hopefully it'll just go away. But this is something we need to talk about. We need to, when people are coming into Krishna consciousness, we need to tell them, hey, you're going to expect this, you know? And you can't just chant it away. You can't just submerge it and hope it'll go away. Can't ignore it, because it's not going to. At least many of them are not going to. So first of all, when we know that it doesn't make us failures, it doesn't make us not devotees. a guru had that say, you must not be a devotee. You know, but it's just what happens. It's expected. It's that's why you have this a stage of bhakti called anartha nivritti. They're kind of the beginning of the removal of the weeds. It wouldn't be there. It's part of the process. It's not shameful. It's not a sign of failure. It's nothing of the kind. And instead, we feel ashamed, and we can't help but see it in others. And sometimes that makes us feel better about ourselves. And so we're condemning ourselves, and that we can't help it if we condemn ourselves. We at least in our hearts are condemning others, and we feel it. We feel the condemnation, and we feel others' condemnation, and it's really hurting us. But it doesn't have to. We just have to, figure out how to pull the weeds. you know, and the more that we can, share wisdom and share, the easier it gets for people. Instead, we bring people in with unrealistic expectations. And unrealistic expectations, by definition, right, cannot be lived up to. And oftentimes, if we do reach out to somebody, they'll say, just chant Hare Krishna. And they might do it kind of nervously because, that's what they're trying to do. It's not working, but they're hoping it's going to. Prabhupada, I think it's in the Light of the Bhagavad, where Prabhupada says that, was it that failure? He has an elegant way of saying it. Failure so maybe the turn into the pillars of success. What does he say? It was a beautiful, a beautiful. He had a better term, but that's the ultimately is that our failures can turn into becoming the pillars of our success. Because the things the weeds that are there, even if we seemingly succumb to them and they're hurting us, by addressing them we become better. Our heart becomes healed. And having to reach deeper for Krishna's compassion, right? Having dealing with that. Okay, perfect. Yes, that's like Sachindra Krishna. One should not be discouraged in the discharge of devotional service. Failures may not be detrimental; they may be the pillars of success. Yeah, he says it so beautifully, huh? So beautiful. So I really think we have to look at this, and one by one or little by little, we have to change this culture if we want to succeed. And we'll be so surprised, I think, how easy it is. But it's worse when we said when we burden ourselves with feelings of being failures and all this shame and stuff. It just adds to the problem. So how can we give ourselves a little more compassion, knowing that Krishna does, and give it to others? You know, I think it's important. An integral part to this notion of being able to really love, especially in the way that we have this opportunity. So anyway, I guess uh, we're getting close enough to when we usually have questions a little bit early, but I think that's kind of what I've got for you today. So let's get comments or questions. We'll leave it open for all of you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yeah, it's a nice analogy you gave. I feel nobody wants weeds. It's very tough to pull weeds from the garden, and we see them as unnecessary. But as Srila Prabhupada says, failure, well, let me read it again. Failures may not be detrimental, they may be the pillars of success. And so sometimes I feel that without without the weeds, we couldn't appreciate the Bhakti Lata Bij. And sometimes when the weeds are there, and we know that we're stuck in the middle of these weeds, and it in the Bhakti Lata Bij, we're trying so hard to water it, but the weeds are overpowering. We surrender sometimes more intimately to the Bhakti Lata Bij, and that becomes the pillar of success for us because we cry out to Krishna. We become helpless, but not hopeless, but helpless. And that's when, we can advance even more than sometimes when we didn't have those weeds. Of course, if we don't have weeds from previous lifetimes, it's great. We start off at a much higher level, but for most of us, that's not the case. And so we should learn. At least I've learned to embrace the situation I'm in and depend more on Krishna, surrender more to Krishna and his devotees, and 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 it helps me greatly. So you sometimes are thankful for the weeds to showing you that what's the real path.
Thank you for that. Yeah. I think it's also a real chance to be able to understand more deeply what compassion is, and what love is. If we can understand that Krishna, loves us in spite of all these things. And if we understand that, because if we all were perfect, it's easy, right? You'd expect to be loved. We can love one another, and everything can be very easy. But what if we have to, be able to deal with imperfections and still have concern for others and concern for ourselves, and not feel ourselves as being failure? I think it deepens our compassion, gives us a chance to open our hearts further. If it was all smooth, then I think the heart doesn't open as much. The resistance to love is strengthening if it's gone through. So, dear Krishna Prabhu, I see you have your hand up.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, and Hare Krishna, everyone. I really appreciate this concluding lecture, and makes a lot 100% sense to me. I just wanted to, I think, Prabhuji, that you were mentioning something that um, uh, is I've learned in Karuna Care, and that is that you were saying that something that other people know and you don't know. That's a blind spot, right?
Yes, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. And what we learn in Karuna Care is that is the part of the Johari window. Johari. I think it came from two guys who, Joe and Harry. So
Okay.
yeah. So in that one, you can. I'm actually looking at a Google version of that. There is uh, four squares. I don't know if I can share with. Can I share this?
Yeah, here, let me know. Yeah, I'm going to stop my share here. You probably should be able to share your screen. I think you should be able to if you want.
Yes. See, share. Where's the share? Reaction. Where's the share? Share screen, right? Yeah. Okay. Uh, Most disabled participant screen sharing. So I can't share at this point. So let me just
Okay.
explain. Let me just explain. So this is a square Johari window model. On top is it's 2 by 2, right? A window, four boxes. So on the horizontal scale, it is the self, that's us, as known to us and not known to us, right?
Hmm.
On the vertical scale, known to others and not known to others,
Hmm.
right? So there is one window which is known to us and known to me and known to others. So that's open, right?
Mhm.
We can't, it's known to me and known to you all,
Yeah.
open to other, everybody, right? But there is one block which is known, not known to me and known to you all. That's my blind spot, right?
Mm.
So if I'm really ego, then then I'm I don't see any blind spot, right,
Yeah.
right. And there
Yeah.
is another block down there, which is known to self, known to me, and not known to others.
Yeah.
This is the area is of facade. This is the hidden area,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's where the problem is. And there is, of course, the fourth box, which is not known to me, not known to you all. So that's
Yeah.
I mean, we can't know everything,
Yeah.
right? So this is a good tool to analyze where the problem is. That's this the hidden area which is causing us a lot of problem, and the blind spot. If we are, I'm an ego-oriented person, of course, and therefore, I don't have any blind spots.
Yeah. I think, when we have that one where it's not known to either ourselves or others, then I think Krishna then arranges for circumstances where that becomes known. Because
Right.
there's always one other that always knows
Yeah, yeah.
it. There's the Krishna other. So I think, many times when we're put into situations, that highlight things even that we weren't, that Krishna will put us in circumstances where that thing comes to the surface,
Exactly right.
many
So that's
times.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's exactly right. So it's not known to everybody. It's Krishna
Yeah.
knows.
He's the exception to that rule. So he knows all the squares.
Yes, that's exactly right.
And
Exactly
so
right.
and so if he sees that we're really trying to deal with the weeds and this one is just hurting us and we just can't detect it,
Mm.
will we put in certain circumstances where it puts his head up and is able to be seen and
That's
noticed. I think that's part of how Krishna helps us.
right. Thank
That's also why everything doesn't always go smoothly in bhakti. So that's the idea. Sometimes it's to highlight certain things that maybe you or others couldn't see. So first, not to be upset that we have weeds. It's normal. It doesn't break Krishna's love, and it doesn't break the love of devotees with compassion either. So then how how to start moving in that direction, to acknowledge them and to examine them and to try to address them. And a lot of it just happens with that if we can understand that they're there, and it doesn't make us failures. It doesn't make us somebody not worthy. It's just the normal process.
think to me the some one very powerful thing that you mentioned is that as we are watering our creeper, actually we're watering our weeds too,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
weeds growing, and then and yeah, because of our ego, because of our uh, social facade. We don't recognize those as problem, and we don't address them.
And we don't realize it's a separate endeavor. Is that we'll say, I'll increase my service, I'll do this more, I'll do this more, and do this more,
Right.
and they're going to go away. But it takes us, it requires us to directly address them, as far as I understand that
Abs-
that that that, that metaphor of pulling the weeds.
Absolutely.
because the
Okay, so
water,
that
the extra watering may keep making those weeds stronger instead of
right,
addressing. So
right,
it's actually a separate endeavor. And
right. Special,
yeah,
separate in depth. Exactly
yeah.
right.
So addressing, of course, it's going to be different for different ones, but it means we have to be looking for those things and recognize them, right? Not just we can't just close our eyes and chant harder. That we have to recognize that they're there, and then we have to find out what they are, right? And a lot of it will be a lot of it is realizing that that this is natural and normal, and probably if I've known about it, I probably have suppressed it or tried other ways to compensate for it, and it's time to stop doing that. And then hopefully you have somebody to talk to. It would be nice if we had a bigger, more open reservoir of advice and experience, but sometimes it's the question of talking about it. Even if there's nobody else to Krishna, this is what I'm feeling. This is what's happening. You know, and but it'll be different depending on what it is. But we do have to make a separate endeavor. If we just try to double down on our devotional service, we're going to water those weeds too. So I think that's pretty clear from the analogy that it takes a separate endeavor. You know, and a lot of them will be pulled out pretty quickly if we stop having shame attached to them. And the other ones, if they may be attached to deep trauma, there may be various things. It may take time. You know.
Sometimes, Prabhuji, in our society, it's said, just chant more, chant more rounds,
Yeah.
and so we feel that, if we chant more, then, maybe they'll be extinguished. But as you've said, it's not always the case because, you know,
And I think the reason why we say that is again because we feel a lot of shame about these things. So it's just we just do want them just to go away. And so we don't, and because it's kind of shameful. So we just say, just keep doing that, keep doing that. But and people, and that's what we've been doing, and it isn't working, in so many ways. That's why people are getting stuck. So I think that's one of the reasons why people offer that advice. But it's clear from the example, right, that it's a separate endeavor. Prabhupada says, by watering the creeper, the weeds are also growing. And so doubling down on the watering process is not sufficient. But I think it's wishful thinking on people's parts. And that's part, and that's but kind of makes that process continue. you know we have to be patient, have compassion for ourselves. It's not we're gonna, okay, now today I'm gonna pull all the weeds. It's not gonna happen that way, and it's okay. But I think a huge part is just realizing Krishna's compassion on us and begin to share in that compassion. We're a mess, but Krishna loves us. And we don't want to stay a mess forever. I mean, that's a given. you know but let's see what we can do with prayer and with consultation and with you know yeah, Karuna Care is there, also. And more and more resources, I think, and people are there. But I said the more that we can be compassionate with each other and have at least have some really good association where we can be more confidential than we usually are, and share our experiences. I think it can begin to happen better, easier and better. And what's happened, because a lot of us have been stuck with these things for so long and just think all we have to do is keep chanting, that the roots got deeper, and we've added other weeds on top of it to compensate for the ones that we have. So yeah, so there's things happening. Um, but the first thing we do is, I think, realize this is an endeavor we have to take up, and that it's normal and natural, and it may be the pillars of our success rather than something to be just so discouraged about. We have to normalize it. We really have to normalize it in our minds and hearts.
So then what are the we've done some of the remediation, talk to devotees, confide confidentially in devotees as the nectar of instruction, Guhyam Akshati Prachati. And what are the symptoms then that one can feel? What are the symptoms of advancement when you know, okay, I'm not so affected by the weed of lust or anger, greed, envy, jealousy, illusion? How do we ascertain for ourselves that we are now progressing? Because the more humble, the more advancement you make, apparently, the more a devotee feels that they've never able to give them up.
Yeah, what the devotee feels is that they can never serve enough, really, is what it comes down to. They feel more, see, like we never can deserve Krishna's love. Krishna is so wonderful that he's priceless. Okay, so we never can be good enough, even if we're spotless, to be good enough for Krishna. So the devotees feel that very, very powerfully. Now, when we hear about people who have prema, and they just, we can't walk in those shoes. Like they'll say, they feel like they're a worm in stool. Well, what they're feeling this extreme indebtedness. That's one of the features of prema. Krishna feels indebted to the devotees, and the devotees feel immensely indebted to them. So they feel like, here I am, Krishna is so wonderful, and in comparison, I'm nobody. But that doesn't mean they feel bad about themselves. It just means that they feel how wonderful Krishna is and how wonderful the circumstances is that Krishna loves them. So it's an ecstasy. When they're saying, I feel like a worm in stool, it's an ecstasy. So it's hard for us to grasp that that's a little above our station. So we can hear that and kind of let that go into the background. But for us, we're just trying to connect more deeply with Krishna. We want to try to move past obstacles that are hurting our heart, hardening our heart. And so one of the huge things is compassion. Compassion for ourselves and others is a hugely powerful thing. And so when some of the weeds are going away, it's usually, it enhances our compassion, it enhances our faith. But it's not, again, we don't want to introduce something that now I'm going to become good enough for Krishna, because Krishna is already there. He already loves us. But it's a question of how much we can open our hearts to receive that love and to engage with that. So it's never a question of deserving or earning something, but it's simply a question of reacting to this priceless, causeless gift. And so by trying to work on these weeds, we're just trying to clear the passage so we can open ourselves more to Krishna and have our love begin to flow. But it's never good enough. It's still always a priceless, causeless gift that we can exchange with. Dear Krishna Prabhu?
I just wanted to share something that's simple. I moved to a smaller, I moved to an apartment recently, and it was a big mess for several weeks. And rather than taking care of the mess at the apartment, sometimes we just went to the temple. And I just realized, I can't just chant and go to the temple and not take care of my mess back home. I had to take care of my mess in my apartment. I just couldn't just chant and wish my apartment will be clean. That's when I thought, oh, okay, yeah, it makes sense.
You were dissociating.
Yeah, I was
Escapism,
disassociating.
dissociating. No, everything is fine. It's beautiful here. I don't have a messy apartment. Yeah, and that's, of course, that's one of the things that we do. There's something there when we find ourselves dissociating and that kind of stuff. And it's another thing that happens to us. Is that I think it's when we have different types of shame, or where there's parts of us that we feel are unclean or unacceptable. Where our ability to perceive ourselves as a soul is compromised by both attachment and aversion. So if we're suppressing things in us, in some ways it makes us harder for us to understand ourselves as being separate from these other things. We become more bound, actually. And so to me, I really think in order to become a transcendental person, we have to become a whole person here. It's the only person we have right now. The soul has its own personality, but it's pretty dormant right now. And so we have a tendency, I think, in this content, to really focus on the intellect, all the answers, and then in some ways on the body, because the body does service. But sometimes the other difficult things are feelings, emotions, and other types of things are kind of downgraded because sometimes the weeds cause some difficulties, and so if you can just kind of stick to knowing all the answers and doing the right things and which hardens the heart, but you seem to be more functional. And that actually, I think, it causes us a lot of difficulty by trying to limit who we are. It sucks our energy, and it because our situation is to engage everything. We see everything as Krishna's energy, and it says in bhakti we're not supposed to be too attached or too averse. And so when the gyanis, that's why the gyanis, when they by the renunciation and knowledge, they go to the Brahmajyoti because they disengage from their humanness. And so they go there, So I think we need all all the equipment we've been given. We're not the body, which means all the other faculties that we have, but those are a machine given by Krishna. They're a yantra, and it works together. And when we have to be ashamed of this or that, or suppress this and reduce that, it throws everything out of balance. And when you do that, renunciation hurts the heart. So when we think if we know all the answers, that's all we need to do. Yeah, we have all the different faculties we have, right? There's the body, the mind, the intelligence, the emotions, the creativity that we have, our different types of abilities that we have, our ability to create, envision things. We have all of our capacities, all of our faculties, and that's part of what the machine that we've been given. And the idea is to use those, in our devotional endeavor. And then when we do that, I think it becomes a lot easier to see ourselves as separate from those things. But it's hard when we have to be ashamed of these weeds, and try to suppress things and hide things and do that kind of stuff. So I really think, Krishna sees us, and he sees us warts and all, but he still loves us. And advanced devotees will do the same thing. So how can we be more compassionate with ourselves and others and start working and see this as normal? I think it's our first step, and there's we can help ourselves and others and keep expanding this. If this becomes normal, I really think we could have people come to Krishna consciousness and just move so smoothly that we'll be just shocked. That's what took us, so many years, and we still didn't do it. They'll just do it so much faster if we can normalize that kind of environment for growth. I just think it will shock us old timers who've been fighting these same battles for so long. We'll think, darn, that was easy. So anything else?
But for that to happen, Prabhuji, the main thing is to be able to, as you said, to be able to recognize the weeds, and then to be able to talk to people, as you mentioned, Nectar of Instruction 4. And that, I think, is the hardest task, You know,
Yeah.
exchanging prashadam with devotees, not a problem.
That's
Gifts,
easy.
not a problem.
Yeah.
But the be able to reveal your heart to
Yeah.
a devotee in confidence that they won't say, "Oh my God, you're so lusty. You're chanting 16
Yep.
rounds, but you're
Yep.
still got so much lust. You're
Yeah.
looking at all these women the same way you were 20 years ago."
Yep.
That is the hardest thing to do. And that's where we all struggle to be able to
That's
find
right.
someone to share, a devotee, of
Yep.
course, to share that. And until we find a way to have that, maybe a counselor, but sometimes even counselors have a hierarchy. You know, you really sometimes need a friend, a devotee friend, maybe on the same platform, or just a little higher, something. But that, until we can find a good way, even I have a hard time finding that in somebody. You know, I've searched long and hard, but it's still very hard because for whatever reason. So I end up just talking to Krishna from day one, and so as my best friend, and so he's helped me individually uh, more than I think most people could have, because I don't have anyone to talk
Yeah.
like that to. But that is much needed in the society, and that's hard.
Yeah, Hari does well. Yeah, and that's why we have to start a little insurgency here. I think we have to, and at the very least, we can at first realize that Krishna accepts us under all conditions, and then begin to try to do that. But yeah, we don't have a system where there's generally people we can talk to many times. But if we can, I hope we can begin to talk about it. I hope we can begin to do that. Yeah, Haridas Prabhu has a really good situation, because someone may think that this unconditional acceptance of Krishna may mean that we don't want to improve. He says, he quotes Bhagavad Gita 9:30 in the purport. It says, devotional service is more or less a declaration of war against the illusory energy. As long as one is not strong enough to fight the illusory energy, there may be accidental fall downs. But one is strong enough, he is no longer subjected to such fall downs as previously explained. No one should take advantage of this verse and commit nonsense and think that he is still a devotee. If he does not improve his character by devotional service, then it is to be understood that he is not even then he qualifies as not a high devotee. Interesting, he doesn't say a devotee completely. So yeah, so I mean, I think that sometimes people are fear that if there's an unconditional acceptance by Krishna, then I can say, okay, everything is just fine. I'll keep doing my nonsense. I don't worry about my nonsense. And of course, if somebody does that, then they have no appreciation for what the path is offering. Because it's we're not doing anything for Krishna. It's only doing for us. So really, we really should be motivated to want it. We shouldn't feel, oh, I can do anything I want and Krishna still loves me, but I won't love Krishna if I do that. I won't be connected deeply with Krishna if I do that. So there's a real strong motivation to want to work on that. And now, what I'll say, along with what Prabhupada writes, there's also how Prabhupada acted. And so he had disciples that went away. And there's another place I quoted from I don't know if it was a purported from his lecture where he was saying, that even people who fall away, they're not lost. That Krishna rescues them. And so there are devotees, disciples of his that fell down quite spectacularly even. And when Prabhupada took them back, he took them back. So so Prabhupada is I mean it's legitimate to say, okay, I'm not gonna say, hey, I'm because Krishna loves me, I'm perfect and I don't have to do anything. That means I don't have any regard for that. I'm definitely not much of a devotee, right? So yeah, I agree. But Prabhupada was crying when he came back. And he fell down pretty spectacularly. But Prabhupada appreciated his service and was happy to have him back. So Prabhupada did that. I mean, there was the time when basically the devotees were trying to take the movement away from him, and he gave them sannyas because the sannyas wasn't powerful at that time. And then then he had to kick them out for a while because they were preaching Mayavad philosophy, but he took them back. So it's Krishna's unconditional acceptance is not a if we think it gives us carte blanche and we don't have to worry about it, then it means we don't understand what devotional service is or why we're doing it, that situation we'll never interact with Krishna. That we'll never love Krishna. He'll still love us, but we'll never love him. And so so that's so there really is a legitimate motivation. And I really think it's easier for us to grow if we understand Krishna's unconditional acceptance. Because otherwise we're going to deal more with the shame and the feelings of failure. I'm never, because the devotee feels that they'll never be good enough, because you can't be good enough to do Krishna. But if we feel that I'm a failure and it's hopeless for me, because they said we're not strong enough, we just can't say, okay, I'm going to stop that. Because that means usually means repression, and we're dealing with it, and so it's going to keep coming back. So we just can't say, hey, I'm just going to will myself to be strong, But if we're not trying to address the issue or at least move in that direction, then and then we're using Krishna's unconditional acceptance in that way, then we're cheating ourselves. That's how I harmonize that. But I really think that unconditional acceptance is necessary for us to be able to properly deal with the struggles. And if it makes us just callous and oh, I'm fine, then we're not devotees. We have no appreciation for what we're being given here. All right. Well, it's all right. We don't have to go anywhere, but I think we're past our time. So if there's something else, we can do it. But otherwise, we can draw the curtain on souls are made for love. All right. Well, thank you all especially those who've passed through the whole process here. Thank you for joining us. And got quite a bit of my bhakti lounge here, so we already saw earlier today. We'll be seeing you guys anyway again next week. But this series is now closed. Completed.
Hari Bol, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
All right. Hare Krishna, everybody.